The winter evening had settled over the park like a soft blanket. Snow fell gently, each flake catching the warm glow of the street lamps. Michael Carter sat on the wooden bench, his worn brown jacket dusted with white. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, and his hands trembled slightly as he unwrapped the sandwich he'd saved from his lunch break at the warehouse. It wasn't much. White bread, a thin slice of ham, a little mustard. But it was all he had until payday tomorrow. Michael was 42 years old, though some days he felt much older. Life as a single father hadn't been what he'd imagined. 3 years ago, his wife had left, saying she needed to find herself. He'd found himself instead, found himself working double shifts, found himself learning to braid his daughter's hair from YouTube videos, found himself crying quietly in the shower when the bills piled higher than his paycheck could reach. He looked at the sandwich and sighed. His stomach had been growling for hours. That's when he heard it. A soft sobbing, barely audible over the whisper of falling snow. Michael looked up. There, about 20 feet away, stood a woman and 3 children. The woman, blonde hair pulled back, wearing a tan coat that had seen better winters, was crouched down, trying to comfort her kids. 2 boys and a girl, none of them looking older than 8 or 9. The little girl in the purple jacket clutched a worn teddy bear, her face streaked with tears. Michael recognized that look. That particular kind of exhaustion that comes from being a parent who's trying to hold everything together with sheer willpower and very little else. The woman was speaking softly to her children, but Michael could see her own eyes were red. One of the boys, the one with the blue scarf, was crying too, his small shoulders shaking. For a long moment, Michael looked down at his sandwich. He thought about his own daughter, Emma, who was at his sister's house tonight. He thought about the times they'd gone hungry. He thought about the kindness of strangers who'd helped them when they needed it most. He stood up, his knees creaking slightly, and walked over. "Excuse me?" he said gently. The woman looked up, startled. There was fear in her eyes at first, the fear of someone who'd learned to be wary. But Michael kept his distance, respectful, his hands visible. "I'm sorry to bother you," he continued, his voice soft. I couldn't help but notice the little ones are upset. Are you folks okay?" The woman stood slowly. Up close, Michael could see she was probably in her mid-30s, with kind eyes that carried too much worry. "We're fine," she said automatically. Then her voice cracked. We've just had a difficult day." Michael nodded. He understood the pride that makes you say you're fine when you're anything but. "My name's Michael," he said. "I'm a father, too." "I know that look." He offered a small smile. "The look that says you're being strong for your kids even when you don't feel strong at all." Something in the woman's expression softened. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm Rachel," she whispered. My car broke down 2 towns over. We've been trying to get to my mother's house, but the bus we needed doesn't run anymore. We've been walking and—" She looked at her children, her voice dropping to barely audible. "They haven't eaten since breakfast." Michael's heart squeezed tight in his chest. He looked at the 3 children, the little girl with her teddy bear, the boy in the blue scarf, and the older boy trying so hard to be brave. Without hesitation, he held out his sandwich. "Here," he said simply. Rachel stared at it. "Oh, no. No, I couldn't. That's yours. I insist." Michael's voice was warm but firm. "Please, for the kids." "But what about you?" Michael smiled, and it was genuine despite everything. "I'll be all right. I've got a daughter about their age. Her name's Emma. She's 7. And I know if she were in their shoes, I'd hope someone would help her." Rachel's eyes filled with fresh tears. She took the sandwich with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Michael watched as Rachel divided the sandwich carefully among her 3 children. The little girl with the teddy bear got her piece first. She held it with both hands, looking up at Michael with wide eyes. "Thank you, mister," she said softly. Michael crouched down to her level, snow soaking into the knees of his jeans. "You're very welcome, sweetheart." "What's your name?" "Sophie," she said, then held up her bear. "This is Mr. Buttons. It's nice to meet you both." Michael smiled at the bear, then at Sophie. "You take care of Mr. Buttons, okay? And eat up. You need your strength." The boy in the blue scarf had stopped crying. He was eating his portion slowly, savoring every bite. The older boy stood next to his mother, one arm around her waist. Michael stood back up, his knees protesting again. He was about to say goodbye when he felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down. Sophie was standing beside him, her teddy bear tucked under one arm, her sandwich in the other hand. "You're my hero," she whispered, looking up at him with absolute sincerity. Michael felt something break open in his chest, something that had been closed tight for a long time. His eyes burned with tears he didn't try to hide. "Oh, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what that means to me?" Rachel wiped her eyes. Do you have any way to get us to the shelter on 5th Street? I know it's asking too much, but—" "I've got my truck," Michael said immediately. "It's just across the street. It's old and loud, but it runs. Come on!" 20 minutes later, Michael pulled up outside the shelter. The building was warm and bright, welcoming. He helped Rachel and the children out of the truck, making sure they had everything. "There's a good woman named Mrs. Chen who runs this place," he told Rachel. "She'll take care of you. She helped me and Emma once when we needed it." Rachel took his hand in both of hers. "I don't know how to thank you, Michael. I'll never forget this. Never. Just—" "When you're back on your feet," Michael said gently, "help someone else who needs it. That's all the thanks I need." Sophie ran back for one more hug, nearly knocking Michael over. "Don't forget," she said into his jacket. "You're my hero." Michael hugged her back, careful and gentle. "You're pretty heroic yourself, kiddo. All of you are." As he drove home that night, his truck rattling and his stomach empty, Michael felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Real, deep peace. He thought about what his own father used to say, back before he passed. "Being a man isn't about how much money you have or how strong you are. It's about what you do when someone needs help and no one's watching." When Michael got home to his small apartment, he found a text from his sister. "Emma keeps asking about you. Says she loves you to the moon and back." Michael smiled, tears running down his face in the darkness of his kitchen. He sent back, "Tell her I love her to the moon and back times infinity." Then he opened his cupboard and found a can of soup. It would be enough for tonight. As he heated it on the stove, Michael thought about Sophie's words. "You're my hero." Maybe he was. Not because he'd done something extraordinary, but because he'd done something simple when it mattered. He'd seen people who needed help, and he'd helped them. That night, as snow continued to fall outside his window, Michael Carter went to bed hungry but content. He'd given away his last sandwich. And somehow, in that giving, he'd received something far more valuable. He'd been reminded that kindness matters, that small acts of compassion ripple outward in ways we can't always see, and that sometimes being a hero is simply about being human. The next morning, Michael found an envelope slipped under his door. Inside was $50 and a note in careful handwriting. "A neighbor saw what you did last night. This is to pay it forward. Thank you for showing us what goodness looks like." Michael stood in his doorway, holding that note, understanding once again that kindness truly does come back to us, maybe not always in the ways we expect, but it comes back.